what we're going to do now is that we want to turn this quadratic formula into vertex form so we can determine what the vertex of this quadratic formula is. How we're going to convert our regular format of the quadratic form into vertex format by using the technique of completing the square. So this is what we're going to do. The first thing that we're going to do, we're going to say instead of f of x, we're going to replace that with y. So y is equal to negative 3x squared plus 12x minus 17. What we want to do next is that we're going to move that loose term over, or the constant, to the other side. So we're going to add 17 to both sides. So we're going to say y plus 17 is equal to negative 3x squared plus 12x. Since that number in front of the x squared is not a positive 1, what we have to do next is factor out that negative 3. So our next step, we're going to keep the y plus 17, but we're going to factor out a negative 3. So now it's going to become that positive 1 x squared minus 4x. Now kind of comes the completing the square part. What we're going to do is create a little bit of space on that left-hand side. Since the number in front of our x squared was a negative 3, we need to account for that on the left-hand side. So I'm going to write y plus 17 minus 3 is going to equal negative 3 x squared minus 4x plus something. We don't know what that is yet. That's what we need to figure out. So for the completing the square part, we need to look at our b term, and that's how we're going to get the completing the square. So what I like to do, I like to say that my b is negative 4, b over 2 is what we have to find next, is going to give me negative 2, and b over 2 squared is going to give me a positive 4. So that positive 4 is what I'm adding to both sides. From here, I want to continue completing the square. From here, I want to simplify a little bit more. I can say that this left-hand side is going to be y plus 17 minus 12. And on this right-hand side, the x squared minus 4x plus 4, I can factor that and put it in its squared form. X squared minus 4x plus 4 is x minus 2 quantity squared. As a little hint, that whatever is going to be in its factored form is always going to come from the b over 2 spot. So that's why I like writing out all three terms. So we're going to say negative 3 x minus 2 squared. So once again, we know this was a negative 2 from its factor form. It was a pretty easy one to factor, but it's always going to be the same number that we find b over 2. We can once again simplify that left-hand side to make it y plus 5 is equal to negative 3 x minus 2 squared. Once again, we're trying to get into vertex form. So what we're going to do next is bring that 5 over. Y equals negative 3 x minus 2 quantity squared minus 5. Now it's in its vertex form. HK is what I'm looking for vertex. So I know that my vertex is going to be in the form that 2 and that negative 5. So the vertex, or the HK, is 2, negative 5. We can graph it just to make sure that we did that right. So now if I look at this graph that I just input it from the app Desmos, I have my function negative 3x squared plus 12x minus 17, and I notice that my vertex is the ordered pair 2, negative 5, which is what I found by completing the square.